renewed every year. And she had something to say and she said it. So I really admire that. And that's what I've always said about people who are part of the solution in this country when it comes to homophobia or any kind of racism or bigotry of any kind. It's incredible to me when people do that, because they are part of the solution. The people who are part of the problem, and not just the people like this guy who is sitting there proselytizing his religion and putting in everyone else's faces and telling how wrong everyone else is or gay people are or whatever. It's the people who remain silent and don't say anything as well. People who don't stand up to these bullies, which is what they are. This guy is no different than the people from the Westboro Baptist Church or people of that ilk. The people who don't stand up to this kind of zealotry are, and just by remaining silent, as they say, as the saying goes, by remaining silent, you are deemed to consent. So by not saying anything, you might as well be agreeing with the person. And I have no respect for that. I mean, sometimes, obviously, literally, to not stand up to someone makes sense. Obviously, if you're in fear of your life or if you're being threatened or something of that nature, fine. But if that's not the case and you're in an environment where you're relatively safe and people aren't going to harm you or whatever, and you can speak out without fear of reprisal in terms of being harmed in some way, then for God's sakes, do it. I mean, if you're asked your opinion on something, don't just say, I don't know. Actually have a fucking opinion. So it always really is disconcerting to me when people are acting as if having an opinion on something that goes against the majority is automatically something that should be kept under lock and key. When in reality, that's exactly what we need. We need dissension in this country, and we need it anywhere in regards to any political or civil rights issue, because without dissension, nothing ever changes. Even if someone disagrees with you, on something, the fact that you're having a conversation and that you're even able to have a conversation about it in this country, in America, means a great deal. That's what's great about the United States of America. We can have these discussions. We can have these disagreements. We can have this back and forth. However, of course, I'm on one side of the issue and others are on the other side. So is one side right? Is one side wrong? Yes. In this particular case, there is a right side and a wrong side, just as there always have been throughout human history when dealing with civil rights or human rights. Yes, there is a right side and a wrong side. It's not just about whose opinion it is. It's about what is right in terms of human rights. So when it comes to, for example, Nazi Germany and what they did with the Jews, was there a right side and a wrong side? Yes. When it comes to slavery, was there a right side and a wrong side? Yes. When it comes to the oppression and misogyny of women, is there a right side and a wrong side? Yes. When it comes to the oppression of gay people in this country, is there a right side and a wrong side? Yes. Is there a right side? Yes. These things are not really debatable, except to people who are incredibly bigoted and closed-minded and, frankly, stupid and ignorant, basically. People have this idea that just because you believe something, and this applies to myself or anyone else, that it's right. No. If you can't back up what you believe with facts and logic and et cetera, not just emotional feelings, then that is not something you really have a leg to stand on. You have to actually have something to back it up. And so when it comes to these things like civil liberties and human rights, people actually have to have a basis to stand on. And if you look out through human history, we have that. But I'm not going to go into that in great detail. I just wanted to say that it's wonderful this woman did this. It's wonderful she did that, and I can't thank her enough. So I love people like that. I love lesbians like that, especially. I love big bulldocky lesbians because they're always like so just like don't give a fuck, and I love that. Anyway, that's it. So speaking of hypocrisy, though, Facebook had posted. Actually, a friend of mine on Facebook, he actually had posted on his Facebook about a picture of himself kissing his boyfriend. And when he was kissing his boyfriend, he posted it or whatever, and Facebook said this picture is not acceptable because it's lascivious or salacious or whatever. And they took it off and wouldn't allow him to use it. And so he was pissed off and he asked them what the hell's the problem. And they wouldn't really give him any explanation except for what they said already. And then he goes in and he pulls and compiles a bunch of pictures of what had already been shown previously, which had been by other people on Facebook. They were all heterosexual images of like very salacious sexual pictures of nude people having sex or nude people kissing or making out or whatever. And he was just giving his boyfriend a peck on the mouth. He wasn't actually like doing anything, overtly sexual. Yet they did not block or do not block any of those. So there's a great deal of hypocrisy with Facebook. And, this is not the first time this type of thing has happened on the site. This has happened before with other people. And it's disconcerting because people are actually allowing this to go on. Now, Facebook is a free service. Facebook, it's free. It's free to us, essentially, okay? We don't pay a monthly service fee to use Facebook. And so when a service is free, I basically say people can do what the fuck they want, generally speaking, on that site. Now, is it right for them to do this? No. But do they have the right to do it? Yeah, it's their site. They can determine and dictate what is actually to be shown and what isn't. It's up to them. It's not up to us because we're not fucking paying them anything. If we were paying them, it'd be different. Now, obviously, they make money through advertisers, and that's fine, but it's not up to us to dictate to Facebook what they can and cannot put on their site. That's just like saying in my site, offlimitshow.com, if someone were to come and say, well, you can't put that on there because I don't agree with it, blah, blah, blah. Or if I decide to edit something out of my site that I didn't like or whatever, I could do the same thing. So is it right for them to do that? No. But do they have the right to do it? Yes. So Ben, I'm sorry, they do have the right to do it. Is it wrong? Yes. I disagree with it completely. Is it a double standard? Yes. Is it hypocrisy? Yes, absolutely. HIV. Okay. So there's this HIV law, in some states, where people, one of them being in Illinois, where a man was detained without a warrant in an HIV disclosure case. He was preparing to meet with detectives in Chicago over allegations that he failed to disclose his alleged HIV positive status to a partner, but instead they just arrested him anyway. And so this issue, this story is not so much about HIV disclosure, although we'll just talk about that too. It's more about the fact that people are being detained without a warrant. Now, most people know through your government class that most of us took in this country, in high school, or middle school, that you can't be detained without a warrant for your arrest. You have to have a warrant for your arrest, which is approved and reviewed by the judge in the area and somebody else, I can't remember. So it's not just like a cop just decides to go and arrest you, and they arrest you. No, now they have something in Chicago specifically and other cities throughout the country that they call what do they call it? It's called an investigative alert, and the alert is extrajudicial, so meaning it's outside of the judicial process completely. It only requires that a detective sign off saying that they found probable cause that you committed a crime. But there's no review by a prosecutor. There's no review by a judge. It's all about what one cop thinks, and that's it. And that is what is frightening. Our rights in this country as gay people, as human beings, whatever, are being trampled on because people are allowing this to continue to go on. And it's completely ludicrous that you would be arrested without due process, without, those types of things. So I find it to be, really fucking incredible that people have been so willing to allow this to continue. And it's happening in other states as well, where cities and jurisdictions are trying to do the same thing. So it's really wrong. And, our rights as gay people are being trampled on. But anyway, not just gay people, people in general. But anyway, this particular case is about HIV disclosure. And I was thinking, is it right or wrong to make people go to jail for not disclosing their HIV status? And I think it's a very tricky question. I am HIV negative and have had friends who are HIV positive, and I would not. And I've dated people who were HIV positive when I was younger. When I was single, I did date people who were HIV positive, knowingly, that they were HIV positive, but I had safe sex with them. So I knew that they were HIV positive when I went to bed with them. And I just made the choice of myself to actually take responsibility for myself and make sure that we had safe sex. And I didn't do anything that was going to put me at risk by having sex with this person who I'd dated for 6 months. Anyway, so the question is the onus on the person who's actually the positive person or the negative person to protect themselves. Is it the positive person's responsibility to protect the negative person and disclose that they have HIV, or is it the responsibility of the negative person, period, to just protect themselves and to assume that everyone has HIV and just have sex that way? That's what I would do if I were still dating and out there. I would always assume that whomever I'm sleeping with has HIV, even if they don't, even if I know they don't, because you never know what they think they know. They may think they're negative and they could be positive. And unfortunately, these days, barebacking is huge in porn. Barebacking is huge in practice throughout the gay community, especially with younger kids. And I've discussed this on a show before, how frightening and scary it is to me how many of the younger generation in the gay population are going around and having indiscriminate sex with strangers and barebacking, unprotected sex. That is incredibly frightening because, I grew up in the 90s and, the late 80s and through the 90s, late 80s through early 90s, that I was a teenager. And I fortunately came out really young when I was 14. And so I was very aware of HIV and all of that because of the news. And I was taught safe sex to some degree. Well, I don't know if I was taught safe sex. My mom, didn't really talk to me about sex at all. But I figured it out on my own, obviously. But I protected myself as much as I could when I was younger in the 90s. And I've known people who I knew in the 90s who were older than me, like in their 20s or whatever, early 20s, who died later because they had HIV. They had AIDS, actually. They died of AIDS. So I grew up thinking HIV and AIDS was something you definitely want to protect yourself from. You do not want to get at any cost. You want to make sure that you do not get it because it's a horrible disease and you will die most likely from it. And if you don't die, you'll have a really miserable life, a quality of life. And that's the kind of picture is painted. When I was 15, 16, I think 16, I watched the movie called Longtime Companion, which is about the AIDS crisis and beginning in the 80s and everything else. And how they saw all their friends dying and how horrible they looked as a result of it, some of them, and they just wasted away and they were young and they died. And there's been many movies like that since then, but that was one of the movies that shaped my opinion of HIV when I was a kid. And so growing up as a teenager and into my 20s and stuff, I was very, very safe sex oriented. And I'd say all of my friends were as well. And so we grew up in an era where the era directly after AIDS came about, and the era that had to deal with the ramifications of what happened in the 80s when AIDS was around. We were the first generation to have to deal with it and have to kind of find our way through it and still be able to have sex and have relationships and things like that, but try to protect ourselves. And so the incidence of AIDS and HIV went down drastically through the 90s and through the 2000s and so on. And then now it's going back on the upswing again in the gay community and the 18 to 25 range. I mean, that's the highest incident of HIV in this country, in our community. And that's because that the twinks essentially are barebacking so much and just having unprotected sex. And like I've said before, the reason for that is they look at it as something they kind of off in the ether. They don't think about it as something that can affect them. When you're young, you think you're invincible, blah, 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 all that kind of bullshit. To some degree, you think that way, maybe subconsciously. You don't think it'll never happen to you. But also, it's been so romanticized, believe it or not, HIV in advertising and also in porn and in media and things like that, and how people just basically pop a pill and they have a great life or whatever. They live and they climbing mountains or whatever they have in the ad. But in reality, they don't tell you the fact that they have severe diarrhea, they have severe cramps, they have dry mouth, they have whatever the case may be, or they're wasting away and their face wastes away eventually. And that's usually just AIDS. But my point is that there are side effects of those pills and those things that those people have to take. And so these young kids in our community these days just think, oh, well, I'll just take a pill. And, I've always said, my advice to you is if you're a young person, I say young person, I mean like under 25, or even under 30 these days. I'm getting so old.